Dear fellow Singaporeans, in his National Day rally on Sunday, Prime Minister Hsien spent nearly 2 hours making his address. He talked a lot. The question is, did he say anything? He dwelt on the issue of foreign workers, a matter of grave concern to Singaporeans. He tried to soften the issue by first pointing to the rosy economic data. Mr. Lee said that the GDP for the first half of the year was 18%, and that this growth had created lots of jobs. As a result, unemployment has gone down, the Prime Minister insisted. If only that were true. The Ministry of Manpower reported a couple of weeks ago that the actual number of jobless people in Singapore increased by nearly 25,000 between March and June this year. Seasonally adjusted figures show that nearly 70,000 Singapore residents were out of work in June 2010. So what was Mr. Lee referring to when he said that the unemployment had gone down? He was probably talking about the unemployment numbers in 2009, which did decrease towards the end of last year. Since then, however, the economy has slowed and unemployment has started to rise again. The question is, why did Mr. Lee on this important occasion cite data that is not current? And what good is a National Day rally when we cannot depend on the Prime Minister to use up-to-date information? Was he trying to put forward a picture that looked nicer than reality? Was he trying to spin the issue using data that's more than half a year old? Worse, the Manpower Ministry report shows that those who remain unemployed after 6 months is on the rise. This means that not only are more people losing their jobs, those who lost their jobs are finding it more difficult to get a new one. And Mr. Lee completely ignored this point. And this brings us to the issue of foreigners in Singapore. 36% of our population are not Singapore citizens. The number of people on this island increased by more than 1 million to more than 5 million in just the last 10 years. And this happened when the PAP recklessly opened our immigration gates with not a care about whether our society was able to cope with the sudden increase. The PM also avoided talking about foreigners suppressing the wages of Singaporeans and worse, taking away our jobs, which has led to the increase in unemployment. And despite the bleak outlook, the government intends to bring in another 80,000 foreigners this year, whether we like it or not. Mr. Lee intends to increase our population to 6.5 million, which will mean that foreigners will eventually outnumber Singaporeans in this country. Already everywhere we turn, we see foreigners doing everything, from hotels to hospitals, kopitiams to counters at shopping centers. Foreign workers fill every niche in Singapore. And the government is going to increase the number of foreigners in this country by another 1.5 million. Of course, Mr. Lee refuses to acknowledge the root cause of our population decline and the dearth of talent, which is that Singaporeans, skilled Singaporeans, are leaving this country by the thousands. This country is hemorrhaging talent, and a major cause of this brain drain is the stifling PAP system. If he is serious about increasing productivity and making Singapore a base for talent and innovation, Mr. Lee should ensure that we institute reforms to our tired autocratic system that is holding back progress. The PM will also not admit that the PAP is using foreigners to suppress workers' wages in order that profit margins can be maintained. Businesses may be registering greater profits, but this is because our workers are getting paid less, not because they are getting more productive. He exhorts that productivity must be the responsibility of all of us, and that in order that we improve our productivity, we must keep learning and upgrading and increase our value and contribution. He completely omits the fact that according to a survey done by the International Labour Organization in 2009, Singaporeans are already working the longest number of hours, but seeing our real incomes decline. The final straw is that Mr. Lee is telling the people to bear with the large numbers for the time being. It's easy for him to say, because he lives luxuriously while we are made to squeeze in flats stacked on top of one another. he pays himself $3 million a year while we continue to see our incomes diminish. He gets immediate attention when he goes to the hospital while we have to wait for hours because there's a shortage of hospital beds. He protects his own job while making us compete with foreigners that he brings in. No. The Prime Minister has absolutely no moral authority to tell the people to bear with his policy that is designed to benefit his own party at the expense of the well-being of the people. A policy that is rammed down our throats and one that will ultimately ruin Singapore. This National Day rally demonstrates how bankrupt the PAP is of ideas on how to take Singapore forward. The desperate policy of trying to replace Singaporeans with non-Singaporeans will ruin this nation of ours. Its recklessness must be checked. One way to ensure this is to build up the Singapore Democratic Party and vote us into Parliament at the next general elections. You need a voice in Parliament, and we are that voice. Thank you, and God bless.